You've probably got a retirement number in your head, 1 million, 2 million, maybe more. And you've probably assumed that if you just hit that number, everything else falls into place. Here's what 20,000 retirees can tell you. That assumption is wrong. And knowing why could save you years of your life. Here's something wild before we even get into the research. A 70-year-old with $2 million, a strong marriage, and a real sense of purpose can be happier. Genuinely, measurably happier than someone sitting on $12 million who's lonely and unhealthy. That's not a hot take, and it's not me being contrarian for the sake of it. That's what the data actually shows. We're going to get into exactly why in a few minutes, so stick around for that one. I'm Henry, and this channel is about the real numbers behind retirement. Not just what you need to get there, but what actually makes it good once you arrive. So let's start with the study that sparked all of this. A researcher named Michael Frink analyzed data from the University of Michigan's Health and Retirement Study, one of the largest, most detailed datasets we have on this subject, tracking roughly 20,000 Americans over the age of 50 over time. This isn't a quick online poll, this is real longitudinal data on how retirees actually live and actually feel year after year. Here's what he found. Retirement satisfaction does rise as wealth increases. That part isn't surprising. But the curve starts to flatten out dramatically somewhere around $4 to $4.5 million in investable assets. Let me put that in perspective. Going from $250,000 to $1.5 million in investable assets produces a massive, meaningful jump in life satisfaction. People genuinely feel that shift. But going from $4 million to $8 million, for most people, that jump barely registers. Same size increase in dollar terms. Wildly different increase in happiness. Economists have a name for this: diminishing marginal utility. Every additional dollar buys you a little less happiness than the one before it. Here's a way to actually feel this instead of just hearing it. Picture someone with $250,000 in retirement savings. There's real stress there. Every market dip feels personal. Every headline about inflation lands hard. Now picture that same person at $750,000. A little more breathing room starts to show up. At $1.5 million, something bigger shifts. Real fear starts to fade into the background. Push it to $3 million, and people start to feel like they actually have options, like there's a floor under them that isn't going to give way. Now here's the part almost everyone misses. Push that number up to $4 or $4.5 million, and that feeling of security basically maxes out. Go even further, 6 million, 8 million, 10 million, and sure, you can upgrade your lifestyle. Bigger house, nicer car, more first-class flights, but you are not upgrading your happiness. Not in any way this data can actually detect. I want to be precise here, because this finding gets misquoted constantly online. Frink is not saying you need $4 million to be happy. He's not saying happiness stops at 4 million. The curve doesn't drop off a cliff, it just goes dramatically flatter after that point. And critically, 4 million isn't where happiness starts. It's where your finances stop being the primary thing driving your happiness upward. Those are two completely different claims, and mixing them up changes the entire meaning of this research. And this lines up with broader happiness research too, not just Frink's work. Back in 2010, Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton published a landmark study showing that day-to-day emotional well-being rose with household income up to about $75,000 a year, and then that relationship weakened significantly. Adjusted for today's dollars, that's roughly $110,000 to $130,000 a year. More recent work from Matthew Killingsworth suggests the relationship does keep going, even at higher income levels. It just gets a lot flatter, a lot slower. Different researchers, different data sets, decades apart, and the pattern keeps showing up. Money helps enormously, right up until the point where it stops being the thing standing between you and peace. So why does this happen? Why does the happiness effect of money just flatten out like this? Because money solves problems in layers. And the deeper you go into those layers, the less financial the remaining problems actually become. Lot 1 is survival and safety. This is the biggest one: food, housing, healthcare, basic physical security. When someone is genuinely worried about covering the essentials, that stress is overwhelming, and money at this layer buys the biggest happiness gains you will ever see. Full stop. Quick gut check while we're here. Are you still in this layer, worried about the basics? If you're watching a video like this one, probably not anymore. Which means most of what follows applies to you. Lot 2 is autonomy. This is having enough to walk away from a job you hate, or a boss who's draining you, and actually build your days around what matters to you instead of what pays the bills. That's deeply meaningful. And for most households, this kicks in well before $4 million, often way, way before it. LAR 3 is comfort and option value, a nicer home. The freedom to travel when you want to. The ability to cover a surprise expense without your stomach dropping. This is genuinely where a lot of people are aiming when they picture retirement in their heads, and it's a real worthwhile stage of life. And then there's layer 4, status and luxury. A second home. First-class flights instead of coach. A nicer car than you actually need. Here's what the research shows about this layer specifically. The emotional payoff basically collapses. It's fun, sure, nobody's saying it isn't. But that enjoyment fades fast, and people adjust to it faster than they expect, which means it doesn't move long-term happiness the way people assume it will. So, quick question, which layer are you actually chasing right now? It's worth sitting with that for a second before we move on, because by the time someone's up at that fourth layer, most of their remaining problems genuinely aren't financial anymore. They're human problems. Health, relationships, purpose, belonging. And money doesn't have a direct line to buy any of those things. Which brings us right back to that comparison from the top of this video, the 70-year-old with $2 million, a strong marriage, and a real sense of purpose, versus someone sitting on $12 million who's lonely and unhealthy. According to Frink's research, the 3 biggest drivers of retirement happiness are, in order, financial security, specifically having enough that you actually feel safe spending it, health and relationships, especially the strength of your marriage or partnership and how socially connected you feel day to day. Money is on that list. It is nowhere close to being the whole list. Now here's where this gets genuinely useful for how you actually plan your own retirement. Frink's research isn't just about the size of your portfolio, it's about how that money is structured and specifically how reliable your income actually is. He's got a phrase for this that I really love, a license to spend. His finding is that retirees with steady guaranteed income, Social Security, a pension, an annuity, feel far more comfortable actually spending money than retirees sitting on the exact same net worth in a pile of investments they have to manage themselves for the rest of their life. Let's make this real with 2 examples. First, meet Denise. She's got $3 million invested, no pension, and she's managing her own withdrawals for the rest of her life. Using a 4% withdrawal framework, that generates about $120,000 a year. Add in Social Security for her and her husband, say $65,000 combined, and their household income comes to roughly $185,000 a year. On paper, that's excellent. That level of income supports a genuinely comfortable retirement for the vast majority of households in this country, but here's what's actually running through Denise's head most months. Should I really be spending this right now? What if the market drops 30% next year? What if inflation stays high for another decade? What if we both live to 95? What if one of us needs long-term care in 10 years? Mathematically, Denise is more than fine, arguably more than fine by a wide margin. But emotionally, she's still bracing for impact because it doesn't feel like she's spending income. It feels like she's eating into a pile of savings she's supposed to be protecting at all costs. Now meet Robert. He's got $1.5 million invested, less than half of what Denise has sitting in her accounts. But he's also got $8,000 a month coming in reliably from Social Security and a pension combined. That's $96,000 a year before he even touches his portfolio. His portfolio isn't his lifeline, it's just his backup. Robert's internal monologue sounds completely different from Denise's. I've got that check coming in every single month, so I can actually spend it. And here's the twist that researchers keep finding. Robert often reports feeling wealthier than Denise, even though his portfolio is objectively smaller. Because his baseline is protected, his day-to-day uncertainty is lower, and that changes everything about how he actually lives his retirement, not just how his balance looks on paper. This tracks with something behavioral economists call mental accounting. People instinctively treat the principal sitting in their portfolio as dangerous to touch, and they treat guaranteed income as safe to spend, even though, mathematically, those 2 things can be worth exactly the same amount. So the practical takeaway here isn't just grow the portfolio bigger, it's what reliable income can you actually build for yourself? Maybe a partial annuity to create a real income floor underneath you. Maybe delaying when you claim Social Security so that monthly check is permanently bigger for the rest of your life. The whole point isn't just having money sitting somewhere, it's actually feeling free enough to use it. Now let's talk about what chasing the wrong number really costs people, because this is the part that doesn't get said enough. Here's what tends to happen when someone chases a bigger number without ever asking why. Someone works 5 extra years to grow their portfolio from $3 million to $4.5 million. 5 more years of putting off the trip they've said they'd finally take. 5 birthdays with their grandkids where they were somewhere else or too tired to really be present. 5 summers that came and went while they stayed at a desk. 5 Thanksgivings squeezed in around a work schedule instead of actually being there. And based on everything we just walked through, that jump, 3 million to 4.5 million, barely moves the happiness needle at all. The cost was real. Measured in actual years of a life, nobody gets back. The payoff, according to the data, mostly wasn't. I want to be really clear about something here. I am not telling you to stop saving. I am not telling you to retire before you're actually ready. Finances matter enormously, and this research makes that abundantly clear. What I am telling you is this: get brutally honest about what your next financial milestone is actually buying you. If it's moving you from real fear to real security, that is worth a tremendous amount, and you should absolutely pursue it. But if it's moving you from comfortable to slightly more comfortable, it might not be worth what it's quietly costing you in time you will never get back. And that's exactly where your attention should start shifting instead. Your health, which you're building right now through the choices you're making decades before you ever retire. Your relationships, which take real, ongoing investment, not just good intentions floating in the background. Your sense of purpose, which doesn't show up automatically the day you stop working. You have to build that one on purpose, deliberately, the same way you built your portfolio. The goal of retirement planning was never actually about hitting some magic number. It's about finding the exact point where money stops standing between you and a good life, and then spending everything that comes after that on the life itself. So here's my actual question for you, and I want a real answer, not just a number. What figure have you been chasing? And be honest with yourself for a second. Is that number really still about safety at this point? Or has it quietly become about a bigger number just for its own sake? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one of them. And if this changed how you're thinking about your own number, even a little, hit subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of thing we're digging into here every week.